Hey guys, I'm Darren Purchese, and today we're going to head into the kitchen and cook up a storm. Let's go! Yep, and we're going to be making one of my famous explosive raspberry cakes, and we'll be sure to mix in a whole lot of science. Okay, scopers, first up, we're going to make my chocolate aerated shortbread. For this, we're going to beat a few egg yolks with some sugar until it's pale and frothy. Then we're going to sieve together plain flour, cocoa powder and baking powder. Add some softened butter and a pinch of salt to the egg yolks, and then fold this into the flour. And finally, we're going to roll out our shortbread between two sheets of baking paper to about 1 centimetre in thickness. Chill it for a few minutes, then cut out a 15 centimetre disc and bake in an oven. And this is where some of that science comes in. You see, the aerated shortbread has baking powder, and this contains carbon dioxide. When added to the dough, it expands and creates a light and fluffy texture. Okay, while that's cooking, let's go and get started on the raspberry cream. For this, we need raspberry puree, egg yolks, caster sugar, gelatine leaves, and unsalted butter. Now these are gelatine leaves. We use these to make jelly. But first up, we need to soften them in ice cold water. Time for more eggs, more sugar, and more whisking. Then we can mix that into the raspberry puree and cook until 82 degrees Celsius. To do this, we're going to use our Swish new batch pasteurizer. Once the puree mixture reaches 82 degrees, we can then add the drained gelatine and the butter, and finally set into a 15 centimetre cake ring and freeze. Next, we're going to see some more science in the kitchen as we make our raspberry marshmallow with popping candy. For this, we're going to add water, caster sugar, and dextrose, which is a special type of sugar with a different sweetness, and we're going to heat these three ingredients until they boil. We're going to remove from the heat and add glucose, and then return to the heat and cook it to 140 degrees. Now we're going to add some egg whites to our bowl. We're going to whisk it to high speed. And we're going to try and get as much air as possible into these egg whites to give the marshmallow a light and fluffy texture. Once the temperature reaches 140 degrees, we pour the syrup slowly into the egg whites and then whisk on high speed. Next, we melt the gelatine in a hot empty pan and then add that to the mix along with some raspberry powder for flavour. As the gelatine is cooling down, it's making the marshmallow go nice and thick. And finally, we're going to add some of this popping candy and push it down on top of the shortbread with a frozen disc of raspberry cream. Now, if you want to see how this scientific sweetness turns out, you'll have to pop back later on in the show, and you, Dr. Rob, to see the big finale. Welcome back to the Burch and Purchase kitchen, where today we'll be looking at some of the science involved in making one of my famous explosive raspberry cakes. With our aerated chocolate shortbread, beautiful raspberry cream, and of course our raspberry marshmallow with popping candy already made, it's time to move on to the raspberry jelly. For this, we'll need raspberry puree, some sugar syrup, our gelatine leaves, and this, we need a tiny amount of agar, which is a type of seaweed, and it makes jellies. Now, it's really important to weigh out ingredients correctly, and when you're using only a tiny amount of ingredient, like this agar, you need to use scales that weigh just 1/0.1 gram. For this recipe, we need 2.25 grams. To make the jelly, all we need to do is place the agar, sugar syrup and puree to the pan, give it a stir and then heat. Next, we add the soaked gelatine and give it a stir. That's our jelly made and ready. We're just going to finish off the layers on this cake by just pouring the jelly on top and watching it set. And with some of this leftover jelly, we'll pour it into these fancy silicone moulds and use these for decoration later on. Okay, now in they go. And while they're setting, we can go and make our delicious milk chocolate mousse. For this, we're going to add cream, milk, and some trimoline, which is a type of inverted sugar, and the seeds from one vanilla pod. Then we'll heat this to 80 degrees. We're going to add our egg yolks and recook to 85 degrees. Now what we're doing is making a custard. We've added the egg yolks to the hot milk, and we're going to bring this up to a temperature of 85 degrees, which is going to cook the eggs and make them safe, but also give the custard a nice thickness, so our mousse has got a great texture. Finally, we're going to add the soaked gelatine and the chocolate and blitz well to emulsify. Then we're going to pour the mixture into a bowl, fold in the whipped cream little by little until we have a shiny cream. And what we're going to do now is assemble the cake. Right, and we've got 2 more components left to finish this explosive raspberry cake, and I reckon they're the most fun parts of all. First up, the dark chocolate spray. For this, all we need to do is mix some melted cocoa butter into some melted dark chocolate before pouring into our special spray gun. Now, how cool is this? Spraying liquid chocolate onto a cake. You see, when you spray onto a cold or frozen cake, the liquid chocolate reverts back to solid and congeals on the cake, leaving a velvet textured finish. We use the cocoa butter to help thin out the chocolate spray mix, otherwise melted chocolate is too thick for our gun. Now for our final component today, nitro crushed raspberries. We're just going to pour some raspberries into a bowl and pour liquid nitrogen over the top. The liquid nitrogen is around minus 196 degrees Celsius, and it's great to have in the kitchen because its extreme temperature can help snap freeze ingredients in a matter of seconds. And once the raspberries are frozen, we can smash them up into small pieces to put onto our cake. The great thing about the liquid nitrogen is we're not going to harm any of the enzymes in the raspberries. We can just smash them into individual filaments. There you have it, one amazing explosive raspberry cake made using a whole stack of kitchen science. Now for me, there's no better recipe for tasty science than this.